Welcome to Life Lessons. For the next few weeks, we are talking with people who are caring for family members who have Alzheimer's or dementia. The Alzheimer's Walk is coming up here in September, and we're kind of taking a different twist on Life Lessons. This is Karen, and Karen, you've been caring for your husband, Jared, who was diagnosed how many years ago?
9 years ago.
And how did that come about, the diagnosis?
Well, I think it's probably a common way. I didn't really notice it. He was mayor at the time. I was taking care of children. He was working, so I didn't notice a lot of the things. And it was actually his secretary who called me one day and said, "Are you noticing anything different about Jared?" Things like that. And so then I took note. And then it was actually Jared who was frustrated because he would forget things or couldn't remember things or just foggy, brain fog kind of thing. So he's the one who insisted that we go get tested.
And he was 49.
49.
So young.
Very young.
And had a career with the police department and then was mayor, and you go to get tested, and did you get the diagnosis right away or did it take some time?
It took some time. It took a couple months, and he was actually diagnosed with early onset dementia, which is fine. And we went to a doctor here and they just kind of said, well, there's really not a lot you can do, so basically go home and live with it, right? We didn't really want to do that. Kind of thought, oh, that's maybe a second opinion might be in order. So we asked this doctor if he had a referral. We went down to the University of Utah. The doctor down there was like, I just don't hand out that diagnosis unless I know for sure. So there was some more rounds of tests. He actually did the PET scan, which is, there's really only two ways you really know if it's Alzheimer's. One is if you're dead and you do an autopsy. Another is if you do a PET scan. And it came back that he had it.
So that was a definite yes.
That was a definite yes.
And that's not just go home and live with it. I mean, at that point, everything changes.
Everything changes.
What happened next?
Well, what happened is he was due for re-election, I think we found out in June, July-ish. The timetable, I'm not sure. But he was due for re-election, and so we just didn't run again.
And that was 9 years ago.
It was 9 years ago.
And what have we call this life lessons, so what have you learned, one or two lessons over the past 9 years?
You don't take anything for granted, and you live one day at a time. Be happy in that moment. So.
And you're still caring for Jared at home, still lives with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that the long-term plan, or do you think?
I hope so. I hope that's the long-term plan. You never know. Like I said, I tell people every day you get up and it's like putting a puzzle together. We don't know what puzzle we're putting together that day. So long-term plan, yes, I really hope. I pray you can stay at home, but you never know.
How has it changed your day-to-day activities? I mean, do you go out with him? Do you have to be with him? Is he speaking? How have things changed?
He really, where he's at right now is so much better than where we thought he was going to be. When we first got the diagnosis, it was 5 to 7 years, and we're at 9 years. And really, he does pretty well. If we go out in public and if people do not know, because he looks fine and he acts fine for the most part, nobody ever knows. But if you talk to him, it's pretty evident. He is now at the point where he can't really speak. He can't talk, kind of put sentences together. And that's frustrating because he loves to talk. So that has been the most frustrating part.
But he knows who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thankfully.
What would you say to families that are going through this right now that might be watching? They're at the early stages and they're scared to death of what's coming.
Scared to death. The fear never leaves. Because you don't know what's going to happen. The fear never leaves. But it is so important to get with people who are going through the same things. We've started a support group, and to go to that group is life-saving sometimes. When you go to that group, stays in that group stays in that group. Okay, so there's laughing, there is crying, there is every kind of emotion that you can possibly think of that comes out in that group. But it makes you realize that you're not alone, There's other people dealing with it. There's a lot of people who are in worse shoes than I am, you are. And so you just are grateful for the moments you have, and you just live day to day. And just be so glad you have another day to live.
Yeah. The walk is coming up in September. We'll have a link down below where you can get information if you want to go. And the purpose is to find a cure and raise awareness, and we're trying to raise awareness here. I've asked everybody else this. I'll ask you, what would a cure do for your family?
You know, right at the moment, it probably is not going to help Jared. But saying that, Jared has been in 3 different studies, drug studies for a cure, through the University of Utah. And when we started doing that, he said, I know it won't help me, but if it will help somebody else, on the bandwagon, here we go. Because really, it's an ugly disease, and nobody really wants to live with it or deal with it. And so for me and my family, it would be great. It's not necessarily hereditary, the form Jared has, but if it would help someone else not have to go through this, then more power to them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too that until you experience it, you think that's other people's problem. You know, it's that which you are a lot of ways, but a lot of people don't understand it, and then it hits them, and then it becomes real.
Yeah, wow. Well, and everybody deals with something. Everybody is dealing with something, and until it becomes personal, you do that. You kind of scoff it off, but it's personal now, so it's a real thing.
Well, thank you very much. We wish you and Jared and your family the best.
Thank you.